of some of his literary works. The piece of land on which it stood had formerly been nothing but a bare pasture, exposed to the full force of the prevailing westerly wind, and the trees that now encircled and protected it had taken 40 years to grow to their present height. Inspecting the garden always gave him considerable satisfaction, and he strolled here and there, occasionally turning his head to follow the progress of the dog or to listen to the song of some bird. The lawns were thick with freshly fallen leaves. After a time, he retired indoors, leaving his stick in a corner of the porch and hanging his hat on a wooden peg. The house was too far from the town to be supplied with electricity, and all artificial light came from oil lamps. One such had been lit in the dining room, where the old man ate breakfast in the company of his wife, Florence. He had married her a decade earlier, his first wife having died unexpectedly. They sat at opposite ends of the table, and by mutual agreement talked very little. Early morning was never a good hour for conversation. It being a Sunday, the newspaper had not yet been delivered, and she seemed content to read a book while sipping her coffee. The room was rather chilly, and around her neck she wore a fox stole. The head of the fox, with its glass eyes, dangled over the book. She had a round face, dark brown hair tied in a bun, and heavy-lidded eyes that gave a powerful impression of melancholy. The old man wished it could have been otherwise, for his own personality had melancholic tendencies, which would perhaps have adjusted to some counterbalancing force. Still, one was what one was. His outlook on life, his essential philosophical beliefs, had been formed long ago. At his age, he could hardly expect himself to change. He drank tea, and ate bacon and toast. The dog sat by his side, saliva spooling from the edges of its mouth, uttering polite whines. "Wait, Wessex," the old man chided. Now, where are your manners? Stop begging." But the begging was a regular part of breakfast, and, as happened every day, the whines grew more urgent and insistent until the old man at last dangled the bacon rinds above the dog's nose. "Gently, gently, don't snap. There." Once he had finished, he wiped his fingers on his napkin and drained his tea. As he rose from the table, Florence looked up with an anxious expression and appeared on the point of speech, but then chose to remain silent. The old man was relieved. Her anxieties were almost always unnecessary, and at this hour of the day his mind was on his work. But out of kindness he felt obliged to say something. "How are the hens laying?" he asked. The abruptness of his inquiry seemed to startle her, and it took a moment before she gave the reply that they were laying well. "I think they are laying well," she corrected herself, as if experiencing a degree of uncertainty on the matter. But the old man's interest in the hens was limited, and he was disinclined to be drawn into further talk. He nodded and left her, the dog trotting at his heels. Adjacent to the dining room lay the hall. It was simply furnished. A grandfather clock stood and ticked by the side of a flight of stairs. A black telephone gleamed on a small table, and a barometer in a mahogany case hung on one wall. The old man went up the stairs, turned right along a short corridor, and entered the study, which was his daily refuge, even on Sundays. Wrapping a woolen shawl around his shoulders, he settled at his desk, while the dog curled up on a rug. The observance of an unvarying routine was one that the old man valued highly, and that, he believed, contributed in large measure to his productivity as a writer. For many years he began each day with a walk around the garden, in the belief that the fresh air invigorated his brain.
To keep listening to this audiobook, I've left you a link in the description so you can do it at no cost thanks to Audible's 30-day free trial.